And welcome back to another episode of the Cincinnati Sports Scene Podcast, where we break down the wins, losses, and everything in between across the Cincinnati sports landscape. I'm Dave, joined by Sam, and tonight we're doing things a little bit differently. This week we're skipping our usual The Week That Was segment and zooming out for a full look at the state of Cincinnati sports, from the Reds and the Bengals to FC Cincinnati, the Bearcats, and we even make the question for the potential of future sports teams here in Cincinnati. Stay tuned, because we're laying everything all out. We've got our hot takes, hard truths, and as Crawley always said, a few glimmers of hope. So buckle up, whether you're a lifelong fan or new to the Queen City. This one episode is you do not want to miss. Let's get right to it, Sam. Before we go into our topic of the week, this state of Cincinnati sports, there are a couple of things that happened this week that I think we should touch on. Happened on, I guess, was it Tuesday of last week?
Yeah, it was before the 14th, because the 14th is when they had that.
I think it was the 13th. It was the 13th where Commissioner Manfred reinstates Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson and a lot of those other people from the Black Sox that threw the World Series to our beloved Reds. And, he said that once you die, you no longer have a lifetime ban, obviously. So thoughts, on that, releasing the ban one day before, the Pete Rose Day here in Cincinnati, and just overall thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, it was time for it. I know it's one of those subjects. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think everybody's entitled to their opinions that they've formed on Pete Rose, because he's one of those guys you got to separate the art from the artist. And so, I mean, strictly from a baseball standpoint, he obviously is the hit king, but he bet on baseball. Took him forever to admit it, and then when he did, he said, well, only on the Reds to win, right? So how true is that? I don't know. People kind of stopped digging after he finally admitted at least some truth. Knowing how big of a gambler he was, it probably wasn't exclusively that the Reds were going to win. But, that's not really what we're here debating. As far as the ban being lifted, I think it was time. As soon as MLB started taking money from gambling companies and shoving it down our throats constantly, I think it was anybody with any gambling related, punishments, it was time for those to be lifted. Obviously, moving forward, if you bet on baseball, you should be lifetime banned. And I think it's a good precedent for Manfred to set that, hey, once you do pass on, we can properly celebrate you if the Hall of Fame voters decide to do so. Because, I mean,
and that's
all
the
it
next
is.
part, right?
Right.
That's the next part.
He's just now eligible, and they could vote him in if they so choose.
Right. Well, I mean, he was eligible before. It's
true.
They just never did.
The Hall of Fame decided to follow MLB suit
Baseball
and never put him on the ballot. Yeah, they could have, because it's a separate entity. It's its own museum. But like plenty of people have said, we've said it before, you can't tell the story of baseball without Pete Rose. And we've been to Cooperstown. He's all over that museum.
Yeah,
he is. Jerseys, bats, balls, I mean, everything. He just doesn't have a plaque there in the main, whatever you call that room there, where everybody's got their busts.
The placard, the plaque room.
Yeah, so I mean, that's all that's really missing as far as Pete Rose is concerned in the Hall of Fame. So
and if you go all the way back, I think it was to episode 4. So it was like 2.5 years ago when we started this thing. Actually, Charlie and myself and a couple of friends, we were in Cooperstown, and you were in Denver, I believe.
That's right. Yeah.
And we did a broadcast from Cooperstown in our hotel room. And one of the questions was, we did like Hall of Fame. Should he be in? Shouldn't he be in? We talked about Votto. We talked about, all these people. But here first, 2.5 years ago, we made the comment that he will probably get in after he dies. He won't get in his lifetime.
Yep, we did mention that, yeah.
So you heard it here first. Maybe Rob Manfred's he might be a fan of the show. Who knows? But
I don't think so. We have not been that guy.
He's probably not. But it comes down to the voters, and it's going to be the committee, the Veterans Committee.
Yep.
Well, it's not called the Veterans Committee anymore. I can't remember what it's
Whatever
called.
they call it now, but yeah.
But it is the Veterans Committee. And, I don't know if he'll get in. I mean, some people think he'll get in right away. I know a lot of people in Cincinnati do, just because of, Marty Brennaman is one of them who, like you said, you can't tell the story of baseball without Pete Rose in it. But to throw it back is like you can't really tell the story of baseball without Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens.
Yeah.
And I know it's that steroid era, but the voters have not elected him. And in fact, at one time it was going up for Bonds and that, but now it's pretty much just it's going back down.
Bonds might not even be on the ballot anymore. I think his 10 years are up.
Might be. It might be. It might go to the committee, right?
Yeah.
So then that will be an indication. And some people, some sports talk show host, national sports talk show host, thinks Pete will get in, but he will not be a first ballot Hall of Fame member. So it might take him like a year 2 or year 3 in order to do that.
Yeah, I don't really know how that'll all play out. As far as baseball is concerned, it's going to be a big topic of the summer. Because I don't know, when does the Hall of Fame voting usually take place? Has it already happened? For this upcoming class?
But he's not eligible until 2027 because the committee will not meet. They don't meet every year.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So the Veterans Committee will meet every 2 years, so it'll be 2026.
So I mean, by then he'll, a year will have gone by. I think
either people forget about him or
I don't not forget about him, but I think that instant, okay, he's unbanned, but I still have these harsh feelings that I don't want to, that'll have passed, especially when salaries keep going up because these sports books are throwing money left and right at the league.
Well,
so
that is true. That is true. All right. Our next little thing from the week that was.
I have one more on Pete Rose here. So when he passed, I guess this was a couple years ago, the Dan Le Batard show did an interview with Pete Rose where he mentioned that if he doesn't get in when he's alive, he doesn't want to be voted in. So I don't know if voters will take that into consideration or not. But Pete Rose is on the record saying it won't do him any good. But, we'll just leave it there, I guess.
Right. And I think part of that was because, he was like,
he was probably upset and mad.
Well, he was upset, and it's like, he wanted to be able to enjoy it with his fans, with his family. And then I think he did later, the Inquirer did an interview with him, and he retracted that statement.
Walked it back a little bit,
and said, it is for the fans and for my family, so I'd be okay with it.
Yeah.
But we'll find out. I mean, we'll find out here soon enough whether or not the voters think like most people in Cincinnati, or do they have this, because it comes down to the Veterans Committee who have watched him play, who's played against him, versus the new writers that only really know Pete Rose from his gambling and being banned, right?
Yeah.
So he probably has a better shot at the Veterans Committee versus if he was going on the ballot for the writers, Baseball Writers Association, because a lot of the newer writers, they've never seen him play.
Yeah, well, and they don't value base hits either. So.
Well, that is true. But his WAR was pretty good, though.
Yeah, but
yeah. All right. 2 things. Bengals news. Trey Hendrickson, he came out, might have been Monday, saying that he will not play this year for the Bengals unless he gets a new deal. We have, we'll probably talk a little bit about how the Bengals handle contracts in our next segment. But so that's one. And then the one that just came out on the 15th, Hamilton County, the commissioners, fire their negotiator who's been with the county for 30 years. And he's the one who has been negotiating with the Bengals. And then they hired a consulting firm that's out of Miami, but they've actually are working with the Cleveland Browns, trying to get them to build a stadium to get that passed. And Mike Brown, or the Bengals family, came out with a statement saying that they're a little disappointed that, negotiations are going to be set back now. We only got 45 days left. And, why would does this firm actually have the best interest of Cincinnati, of the Bengals and the
So
fans?
if it's a Miami firm, absolutely not. And you said the firm is working for the county?
There's one guy from the firm working for the county. He's the lead negotiator now. Yes.
Of all the publicly financed stadiums in the country, the Bengals probably fleeced Hamilton County to the second greatest extent, besides the Miami Marlins. So if you are Hamilton County, why in the world are you hiring anybody from Miami to do consulting on public funding for a stadium?
Yeah.
Why in the world would that be a good idea? It's just I'm glad I don't live in Hamilton County anymore, because you guys got some idiots if that's the route they decide to go. Because, the Bengals deal for the county is bad. That Miami deal is tenfold worse. It's atrocious how bad that city got screwed over. And you're just going to hire somebody from down there and be like, oh, yeah, that we're all good here.
Yep.
Jesus, that's insane.
Looking into it a little bit, the firm is well known for representing cities to get the best deal. All over. Now, did they negotiate the Miami Marlins?
Maybe. I don't know if they were involved or not, but
I don't know if they were. It didn't say that.
I wouldn't advertise it if I was that firm. Yeah, we represented the city of Miami.
But you could find out who it was just by looking it up, right? Mr. Google has all that information at the tip of our fingers, and I didn't do that today because it was such a beautiful day and beautiful weekend in Cincinnati. Mid-70s, sun shining, breeze blowing. Just great days to be outside enjoying this. And I really didn't want to have computer out there as I'm watching, grilling, all that good stuff. So thoughts on Trey Hendrickson? Is he going to play? Or is he going to go the way Carson Palmer? Is he going to F around and find out, as they say, as the kids say?
Yeah, we know the Bengals stance. So I guess it's whether or not Trey Hendrickson's legit about what he said or not. And it's a real shame because that defense was god-awful. He was the only bright spot. And, man, you didn't think that they could get any worse. But if he's not out there,
I saw a stat, and I can't remember the exact, if it was just the AFC North or if it was just the AFC. I don't know, but he had like 10 sacks. The stat said he had 10 sacks and then only 2 tackles other than sacks. So it might have been just AFC games. And, you look at that and you're saying, okay, is he worth $30 million? You can't blame the Bengals because of the landscape. And Trey signed an extension. This is the thing that a lot of people, if you want to say us older people, like say, honor your contract, but that doesn't bug me. It's what bugs me is the Bengals back in 2001 gave him, renegotiated a contract in good faith. He was not the sack leader, right? He wasn't in the NFL. He had some decent years with the Saints, but he was really
he's a rotational third down guy.
Yeah, not a known commodity. And the Bengals gave him that 4-year deal, however much it was, saying, look, we're going to honor, we want you to be successful. Well, then last year, Trey wasn't happy. And now this year, he's not happy because of the market for defensive ends, just exploded. And Max Crosby making 38 million a year. And then Myles Garrett's making $41 million a year. The Bengals, Trey Hendricks is not in that category. I'm sorry. He's not. Because
he offers nothing in the run game.
Right. And that's every Bengals fan would take either of those two guys over Trey. As far as a football production. Now, Trey, as a guy, as a stand-up person in the community, you may take him over Myles Garrett and Max Crosby. But as far as football production, if anybody says they would take Trey over those two guys, then they don't know football. I mean, I'm sorry, they don't. So I don't know. So let's move on. We'll do a trivia. It's a pretty. This is probably going to be difficult for you. Just
So yeah, this guy did work with Miami.
The Marlins.
I just looked it up. Yeah, so yeah, good job, Hamilton County. You guys really did
Yeah.
your research on that one, bozos.
Well,
Kudos to
hence.
Mike Brown for calling him out
Yep.
there, I
Oh
guess.
yeah. Yep. All right. So this comes from the scoreboard stumper, but it comes from the last scoreboard stumper ever at Synergy Field. Okay. All right. So you got to go way back here.
Two?
It would have been 2000
No,
because it opened at 03.
JVP opened in 3. Yeah.
Yeah. So 2002.
All right.
So here it is. Scoreboard stumper. 7 Reds pitchers to win 40-plus games at Riverfront and Synergy Field. How many can you name?
All righty. Let's see. So when Riverfront and Synergy, they started playing there in the 70s?
1970.
Okay. So we'll go Riho.
That is correct.
Okay. Browning.
Browning, that's 2.
Okay. That might be all I have.
Got to think back to the Big Red Machine. And then somebody in the 80s. I mean, Crawley and I have talked about them all the time.
I should know pitchers from the Big Red Machine, but I really don't. I mean, those are the only 2 that I've got. That's
all right. Hey, those of you that out there listening, if you can help us out, help Sam out here. He got Tom Browning, who had the most wins at 63. And then Jose Rio he was number 4th on the list at 49 victories. So we got 5 more out there. And I think you guys know. If you do know, go ahead and send us an email at CincySportsScene@gmail.com, or you can find us on YouTube at Cincy Sports Scene Podcast, or on Twitter and send us a comment with your answer. So let's go ahead and move on to our main event here. It's our topic of the week, and we're going to take a look at the state of Cincinnati sports. And what we want to do is just give an honest assessment, our opinions and assessments. We did some research on this. And basically, we want to see 2 things, right? Is Cincinnati the worst run pro sports city, or is there someone worse than us? You know, which front office, when we get to the Reds and the Bengals, which front office is the worst? The Reds or the Bengals front office? Or is it just a coin flip or a tie, right? But I did send a poll out on Twitter, or X, excuse me, and I've got quite a few responses. And the question was, is Cincinnati one of the worst pro sports cities in America? And you had 3 choices. You had yes, no, or depends on the team. And 60% of you out there said no, Cincinnati is not the worst pro sports city in America. 30 of you said yes, and 10% of you said it depends on the team. And I want to hear from the 60 that said no, which ones are worse than us. Okay, that's what I want to hear. So let's take a look. We're gonna go into the college ranks with the Bearcats first. Okay, and we need to look at the good and the bad of the Big 12, the NIL portal. You know, how's that affecting college football? How's that affecting the Bearcats in general? You know, what are the expectations? And, you know, from Luke Fickell to Satterfield, you know, what happened? And, you know, because Luke's not really magic up at Wisconsin either. So, you know, did he just catch lightning in a bottle here, or did he have a special formula to win in Cincinnati? So, Sam, you're a Bearcat, graduated from UC. What's your take on the state of UC football?
Football specifically is not in a good spot. I mean, they're just not. They've got a lame duck head coach that nobody wants, nobody likes. Yeah, really, it's been that way since the day they announced him as the hire. A lot of people were not pleased about it. I was one of them that was not pleased. figured I'd give them a shot. But where they went wrong and where UC football has had success is getting an up-and-comer, getting a young head coach that's looking to grow, looking to have some ambition. Yeah, they end up leaving, but those 3, 4, 5 years that they're here, the team is good. The team's competing, and when they bring in the Tubervilles and the Satterfields, that's not the case. All right, because Satterfield was at Louisville, not any good. They were happy he left, and Tuberville was just looking to cash another couple checks. So I think when they go that other route, that let's get the up-and-comer, let's get the hot coordinator, or let's get the guy from a lower level and bring him up, that's the route they need to go. And if that's not going to be their focus, I don't see anything changing.
Well, I'm going to play devil advocate right here, but Satterfield was the up-and-coming guy. I mean, at App State, he was the up-and-coming guy.
Yeah, he was, and he took the job at Louisville.
Right.
And he was there for 4 years, and he was 500. You're not an up-and-comer anymore.
No, you're not. But what I'm saying is, if UC would have got him when Kelly left before Fickle, would he have been the same? I mean, can the guy not coach at a big level? Is that it? Or
that's part of it, because UC then was in the American. So maybe he would have had some success similar to what he had at App State. I mean, that definitely plays into it, but you saw what he did at the ACC, which is a better football conference than the Big 12. Or at least, maybe not. It probably was, but
tough to bottom, 500. Maybe. I don't know. Yeah,
he was a 500 coach, maybe a little bit better, but I mean, Louisville under Charlie Strong. I mean, he had that program. They were 10 wins every season. Like they were a good program. And I mean, Petrino had them. They were a good program, and then Satterfield kind of stagnated them. So I mean, I'm not optimistic at all. Not great. I mean, the Big 12, yeah, it's a power conference, but there's not a lot of money in the conference. So there's just not a lot of. We don't have a lot of money here. Booster-wise.
But this year we get the full Monty, right?
I think you're right. I think you're right. I think we finally get the full payout.
Maybe let's see how that plays out.
But I mean, it worries me too now that schools, they've got that 20 million. Well, I don't think it's official yet, but they're going to have that 20 million.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's saying that's what the number is going to be. They're going to have 20 million that they can spread out amongst all their programs.
Right.
Which is, I mean, that's great. But if you want to compete, your boosters have to kick in somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, they can't just be 20 million. It's got to be 40. It's got to be 50. I mean, if you go down south, they're going to have $100 million budgets for their sports programs when you factor in all the boosters and stuff. So, I mean, if you're not touching that, I mean, it helps that you're playing in the Big 12, but it also doesn't because, I mean, those Texas schools, especially those private ones, there's a lot of money down there. And they're going to use it. I mean, they're going to use it.
Look at SMU in the ACC. We don't need any money for 10 years.
I mean,
right?
Shoot. I mean, BYU, I mean, I know this, it's basketball is where they've decided to put their money at right now. But, I mean, if they're going to do that with the Mormon church money, I mean, the rest of the conference doesn't stand a chance. If they decide to actually go all in and go, you know what, we're a sports school and not a religious school.
Right.
If they decide to go all in like that, it's toast. The rest of the Big 12 is toast. You got to hope that the Big Ten says, hey, BYU, why don't you come over here?
So then how can we spin the narrative and how can Cincinnati, I mean,
you have to bring excitement back.
Yeah. What is it? Yeah. What do we need to do? I mean, what are some of the things?
I mean, in my opinion, there's two things that can happen. The football program wins 9 games this year. Satterfield gets an extension and there's some excitement like, hey, he's got this thing rolling. He's figured it out. Fan base is on board. Fan base is behind him. So the boosters will be behind him.
Mm-hmm.
Or you get the next up and comer, somebody who's, I don't know who that would be, who's been talked about for a while, either a coordinator or, I mean, or a, up and coming head coach. I don't know who the up and coming head coach would be, but
from a G5 school,
right?
Somewhere around
there, or you get another Power 5, preferably offensive coordinator. That's my preference, but I think that's the route you would have to go. You have to bring excitement back to the program because there's none right now. There's none.
Right. And speaking of excitement, FC Cincinnati. We're gonna move into them. Is this the best that we have in the city? That's a question. Is this the best run
Yeah.
franchise we have in the city? And is it the best, I guess, bang for your dollar?
Probably, yeah.
And is there growth there, or is it stagnated?
That's up to MLS, right? The growth is going to be up to MLS. I mean, Cincinnati is, in terms of MLS cities, the percentage of the population in the city that cares about the team, Cincinnati's up there. I mean, it's one of the top cities. Nashville's up there, Austin's up there, LA and New York, they're just too big, right? They're not gonna be up there. You got to look at those kind of mid-tier markets. Like I lived out in Denver. Denver would be a prime location that nobody cares about. They're what are they? The Rapids. Nobody cares about them. Okay, so I mean, you get the same thing in Houston and Dallas. Those are bigger markets, but nobody cares about those teams. I mean, St. Louis is a team that a lot of people in that city really care about, and I mean, part of that is because what else are you going to do? They don't have football anymore. But I mean, yeah, Cincinnati's got probably the best stadium in MLS, top 5 fan base. I mean, when the Bailey's rocking, I mean, European accounts, like football accounts, soccer accounts, pick it up and wow, I didn't know MLS atmosphere could get like this, So I mean, Cincinnati's up there. We really are. But the World Cup's coming up next summer. That's only going to add, if MLS does it correctly, that's going to add excitement into the league. They've got to get out of this Apple deal somehow because it's killing. The viewership numbers are awful because nobody wants to pay money when they don't care about other teams in the league. They need to do an a la carte where you can just get your team for $6 a month or whatever instead of paying $15 for the whole league. Nobody cares about the whole league. It's still a very market-driven league, similar to what baseball is now.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a team in the market, nobody cares. And you don't really care about other teams outside your own. I guess that would be the next step, but that's more of an MLS problem, not an FCC problem. FCC does very well compared to the other 30 teams in the league.
Okay. All right. And the one thing that I've noticed FCC does, I think, better than the Reds, better than the Bengals, is where they see a need, if they have a need on their roster, they go out and fill it. I mean, whether...
Think about this. They just signed Kevin Danke for an MLS record.
Right.
Reds and Bengals are, okay, Joe Burrow, sure, but it's quarterback. That's different. Throw that out the window. When's the last time...
Votto was the last big contract.
Let me rephrase.
Yep.
When's the last time they went out and brought in a new player? Not an extension, not a Votto, not a Burrow, not a Chase, but
Mike
brought
Moustakas,
in a free... Right.
Mike Moustakas.
It was Moustakas.
$64 million.
But that was nowhere near the league record, right?
No, most ever for the Reds.
This is a league record.
Yeah.
League record they signed this guy for. Okay? I mean, at Cincinnati, there's investment from the ownership group, and there's money from the fan base. I mean, that they're able to do that. So, I mean, it shows...
It shows
where we
commitment
stand
to winning, right?
Yes.
And that's where I think...
filling the needs that they have. They lost Lucho. They replaced him immediately. Someone younger, not quite as good, but, I mean, Evander's a heck of a player.
Mm-hmm.
He's still an MVP type candidate. Maybe that next level, a top 10 versus a top 3 MVP guy, but still. If you lose somebody, you replace them immediately with someone just as good, almost.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, different philosophies, and we would all love if the Bengals and Reds had that philosophy.
Well, speaking of the Bengals and Reds, let's move on to them. We can combine them together, right? Because pretty much for your entire lifetime, except for there's, a couple of brief seasons, it has been 30 years of misery for you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm old enough, and I've been fortunate enough to see the glory years of the Big Red Machine and
the 90 team, yeah.
He's in 90 World Series, the 80 Super Bowl runs with the Bengals. 30 years of misery. Which ownership group is the worst? Is it the Reds? Is it the Bengals? And what needs to happen for this franchise to be contending again as far as the Reds and the Bengals, really, fans frustrated with the players because, we signed some of these players to contracts and they're not performing? Or are we frustrated with the owners and the GMs because they're signing these players and they're not performing? So let's just go with the Bengals, okay? We all said here that their window to win is now. Joe Burrow even said that the window to win as long as I'm a quarterback. Do they have a win now mentality or not? I mean, is it a top down? And that's the thing. Joe Burrow and the players may.
Players and coaches do. I
I mean,
believe that.
does Zach Taylor do? Does he?
Yeah, I think so.
Then
but you've got to remember,
does it,
because the Bengals front office does not talk. Okay, Zach Taylor has to be their mouthpiece, right? So he's got to play both sides. I think as a coach, he knows what they need, but he also knows he works for the Bengals. All right, it doesn't matter what you think as a coach you need.
But my pushback is, okay, we have started out slow every year.
That's on him.
That's what I'm saying. So is it a win now? Because if it's a win now, you got to win game 1 and 2. Because if you win game 1 and 2 the past 2 years, you're in the playoffs.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. Especially last year, you beat New England.
Right.
New England.
Yeah.
3 wins on the whole freaking season. You beat them, you're in the playoffs. So I get what you're saying, but you also got to look at what that defense was last year. That's what the front office decided was good enough for a win now ball club. They looked at that. They looked at the year before not having Jesse Bates, going, we still don't need to replace him. We'll sign Geno Stone, who just for whatever reason decided to be, an operative from Baltimore and just tank our season the first 10 weeks before he finally, I don't know if the direct deposits weren't hitting on time or what, before he finally decided to turn it on. But
he did make a comment, which is kind of, eye-opening, I guess. And a lot of players have come out. They're not really throwing Lou under the bus, but they're saying his scheme was so complicated that
for the young guys and the new guys,
and Geno could. I mean, it took him. Yeah. He was afraid to communicate because he was afraid he was going to communicate wrong, right?
Yeah.
So he just reverted back to what he knew, like base stuff. And
I did see there were several players that mentioned stuff along that line, which, I mean, that kind of further speaks to it was time for Lou to move on.
I think Al Golden can communicate on a.
You would think so. He's a college coordinator.
Right.
You kind of have to there, Yeah. I know it's Notre Dame. They really good defensively, got a lot of players that are going to be pro, but still.
But still, you got
to dumb it down a little bit.
Right.
I mean, simplify, that's a better word than dumb it down. But
but
yeah, I mean, so we'll see where Golden goes. But I mean, I still don't think they've done enough to get guys in there. I mean, especially if Trey's not going to play.
Well, and let's talk about how the Bengals do contracts, right? I mean, it's so antiquated. It's the Paul Brown method.
Yep.
We'll sign you the contract. We'll give you some signing bonus, but it's not going to be fully guaranteed, right? They changed that a little bit with Burrow and Chase and Higgins. So, there is, but now I think Trey opened his mouth a little too early and a little too often, and the Bengals now are becoming the Bengals, and they're going to be nope. But I know they're trying to work something, but I don't know.
Issue with Trey, he opened his mouth last year too.
Right.
When he had no leg to stack. He literally couldn't sign an extension even if both parties wanted to because he had just signed an extension less than a year earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I know he's got a new agent now because clearly his previous agent was not giving him good advice if he was telling him to open his mouth. So, I mean, you already lost whatever credibility you had from a business standpoint from your, if you're as a player, if you're your own business, right? That credibility went out the window when he opened his mouth last year. I mean, I get where he's coming from. He led the league in sacks. He wants more money, but I mean, you already signed an extension. Like, you're not some rookie You signed as a free agent. You got paid there. You already signed an extension. Now you're wanting a second extension before your first extension even kicked in. Now before it's even up. I mean, it's a lot to ask, and I don't want to sound like I'm being supportive of the front office because I'm not. But I do think they get a little bit of the benefit of the doubt here versus what the national media is trying to portray on, the cheap old, same old Bengals, where it's
Well,
like,
but
I think they have
here's
a leg to stand on here. I really do.
yeah, I do too. And it goes back to Trey. The Bengals gave you 2 weeks to go seek a trade.
They did. And who
And
wanted you?
nobody wanted you. Or they called and they wanted to lowball the Bengals with a 4th or 5th round draft pick. And the Bengals were like, hey, Trey, if you're this good,
I
we
think
want a
you're
2.
overpaid.
Right. Yeah. Then we want a 2. I mean, there's reports out there that are saying they wanted a 1. No,
I don't buy that. I don't.
I don't either. A 2 or a 3. I think if somebody would have came with a 2, the Bengals would have said, yep, I really do. But, I mean, this to me, a lot of people are thinking that it could go the Carson Palmer way, where Carson sits out and the Bengals said, fine, sit out. We're not paying you. And then after week 8, the Raiders called and said, hey, we'll give you X, Y, and Z. And the Bengals said, here you go. I could see that happening here. I could see somebody offering
100%, because the Bengals, they're not paying him. They're
no,
not.
they're not going to. I mean, I don't know. It's a lot of he said, she said, right? Because he came out just last week or whenever he said he wasn't going to play. And he was like, oh, no, we have not been in any communication. The Bengals said that they've been in communication before the draft or right after the draft. And Trey came out and said, no, there hasn't been any communication. So whose bluff are we believing, right? Whose
Right.
word are we going to believe? You know, and the Bengals for years have always been that team that, nope, this is how we do it. This is how we do business. You do it our way or not. And we've got you, legally, we've got you under contract. So you only have really one option, not to play. So, the Bengals, I mean, other teams have this issue, right? I mean, Dallas had this issue. They have this issue. Jerry Jones is another one of those owners that, I mean, in the 90s and 2000, he was going out and getting players. Now he might be past his time. As far as running the team and making those decisions. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what the Bengals need to do.
Or get a real GM, get a real football guy in there.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's the first thing.
The first step.
That's the first step, and then
get more than 3 scouts or whatever, 4 scouts or whatever.
They hired another scout, a college scout.
Well, because they lost one. I don't know if you saw that.
No, I did not.
I actually think it might have been UC. Some college football team hired him as their general manager to be, oversee NIL. I want to say it actually was UC, but
it might have been.
I can't remember. So they lost. So they did not add one. They just replaced one. So
okay, so there's that. But yes, they need more scouts. I mean,
yeah. I mean, what was it? The Ravens had like 30, and we had single digits. Like, I mean, yeah, get out of here.
Yeah, all the AFC North teams. I think Pittsburgh had 12.
Yeah.
Cleveland had like 16, 18, something like that.
Right.
Baltimore had close to 30.
I think Baltimore was number 1 in the NFL.
Something like that.
I think they had the most in the entire
And that's why
league.
they can find the diamonds in the rough.
Right. I mean, they never miss on their draft picks.
No,
never.
Hardly ever.
Never.
But they also have a philosophy and they stick to that philosophy. And the Bengals, they're up and down and all around. And it's like, what's our philosophy on defense? We don't know. The Ravens, through all their defensive coordinators, their philosophy were smash mouth football, almost like Pittsburgh, right? And Pittsburgh's philosophy the same way through the 2 coaches. The Browns are all over the place because that's the Browns. And the Bengals, we're like, okay, what are we? Are we an offensive team or are we a defensive team?
I think they know they're an offensive team now.
Right.
But as far as what kind of defensive team, they still don't know.
And they rely on measurables.
Yes.
And they rely on
You,
tape at times, I think. But I think what they rely on is that Senior Bowl or those where they
when
go
they
down,
actually, when the scouts can actually watch the players because
right,
they can't
right,
physically watch everybody because they don't have
right.
enough
So
scouts.
like when they go to the Senior
The
Bowl,
Senior
they've
Bowl,
got their
yeah.
eye on things, and that's where they draft these guys from. Now I do like the pick of Rutledge, the guard,
Yeah.
but I wish we'd have got him at 3 instead of 2.
No, he was 3.
Who was
The
2?
linebacker was at 2.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
yes. So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I meant the linebacker. I wish we'd have got him at 3, and then
Rutledge, whatever, at 4. Yeah.
at 4. Yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry, and then we could have had somebody else at 2.
Well,
There
no,
was a
they
lot of
got Fairchild.
Fairchild. I wanted
Yeah, because we
Ratledge at
wanted
2.
Ratledge. Yeah, you're
At
right.
2, and
Yeah.
then Fairchild is
Yeah.
who they got at 3. Sorry,
That's who
sorry,
they-
folks. It's been a whirlwind here. All right. So that leads us to fans' frustration, right? Are we more frustrated with the Browns ownership, or are we more frustrated with their ways of doing things, or are we frustrated with just the players because they're not performing? I mean, if you were to rank them, if you were to put a percentage on it, because I really think it's a combination of all.
Do you want me or what I think the fan base as a whole would say?
I think
it's slightly different answers. So for me,
yeah, for you,
me personally, it's ownership than players. Right. I mean, yeah, you can blame the players on their performance, but I mean, when going into the year, these guys aren't very good. I mean, you can't, if they're not good, you can't be mad at them for not being good.
but they're NFL players.
Yeah.
They're better than the ones that didn't get drafted.
Right. But I mean, there's teams that go 2-14 every year.
Well, there are. You're
know,
right.
I mean,
but is that
there's bad teams? It's not like everybody in the league's 500.
No, but the NFL makes it that everybody in the league should be right around 500.
You're right. That is where the majority of teams are.
There, the NFL.
But I mean, I know how the Bengals operate. It's tough because they're never going to change ever. It's we thought we had a glimmer of hope with Mike Brown kind of being pushed aside, but Blackburns are the same way. They operate the same exact way.
Yep.
They're not changing. That hope's gone out the window. We've seen it now for the past 3 off seasons. After we made the Super Bowl, what we did to get back there, it hasn't been what we weren't the Eagles. The Eagles lost the Super Bowl and went out and got whoever they could, and they just won one. And they got a really good shot at doing it again.
Right.
The Bengals, we were the opposite. We're going to let Jesse Bates walk. We're going to let, Boyd we knew was going to leave. Mixon we kind of knew, but still, I mean, those were key guys we let walk.
We're not going to value.
We didn't replace them.
Your line.
Right. Offensive line. Yeah. Didn't get any better. I mean, yeah, you went out and got guys, but they didn't do anything, I mean, it's just not, it's not what you want. The Rams haven't had, well, they finally had a first round pick, but for 7 straight years, they didn't have a first round pick because they were trading it, trying to get guys because they were going all in whenever they could. I would just love for them just for 1 year. And if it doesn't work out, then you can go back. But just 1 year, go all in. And 2 years ago would have been the year to do it. And they didn't. And it's when they didn't, they're never going to.
Right.
And so I think that's why people take their frustrations out on the players because it's falling on deaf ears if you go after the front office.
That's a fair point. That is fair.
So, I mean, you got to get your frustrations out somehow. So I think just the way it is, the players are going to bear the brunt of it.
And the question is, where are you going to go, right? And the Bengals may go somewhere else if they're not, and that's the thing is, I'm reading these articles and they're like, kudos to the commissioners for firing this guy who was in the Bengals pocket, right? Because he got hired by the Bengals after he negotiated that deal. I mean, so it's and the Bengals are mad, well, yeah, now you need to pony up a little bit, just like every other NFL team ponies up. So for however many years, 25 years, you've been robbing the taxpayers of Hamilton County to line your pockets. You've really produced a few good teams. You're starting to spend some money now on the offensive side of the ball, and you're hoping that the defense comes around enough that if we win games like Miami Dolphins used to have to win games 44-42, but we scored how many times we scored 40 this year or this past year and we lost.
Yeah, I think we had a losing record when we scored 30 points.
Yeah,
just insane.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of losing records, let's move to the Cincinnati Reds, or as
500 now.
As my dad used to call them, the Stinkinata Reds and the Stinkinata Bengals. Same questions, right? Ownership. When they bought the team, the Castellini group bought the team, however many years ago it was. We're going to bring winning baseball back to Cincinnati. Well, I don't think that has happened.
They have not. Yeah. Newsflash,
granted,
folks.
There was a couple of scenarios where
two division titles,
and it looked going upwards, but could never get over the hump, right? We go into Philly and get no hit.
San Fran Cueto gets hurt.
Right.
Like the first inning, we go up 2-0 and then lose 3 straight.
Yep.
We're not even going to talk about Atlanta in COVID year.
Well, I was going to say that was horrible. So, the fact that the Reds haven't, that was going to be one of my trivia questions was like, the Reds has the longest losing streak as far as not winning a playoff game. Who's second? But I didn't have time to do that research. But
they haven't even won. Yeah, they do. It's the longest for.
It's misery, right? It's 30 years of misery. 95 was the last time they won a playoff series.
Yeah.
So,
but even I think they have the streak for playoff game as well. They haven't won a playoff game since 2012.
Yeah.
And they haven't scored a playoff run since 2012. Which that's the one that you're like, wait a minute, they did make the playoffs. What do you mean they haven't scored a playoff run since 2012? Yeah.
So let's talk about the Reds. Let's talk about what this franchise can do. It's pretty much mirrors the Bengals, really. I mean, a lot of people don't like Nick Krall because he didn't go out and get an outfielder. Well, if you look at Luis Robert, right? He's batting. He's horrible as far as batting average and on base percentage. He plays a decent glove. And then Santander was the other big name that everybody was like, and he's worse than Robert.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's Nick Krall. I think he found a diamond in the rough in Austin Hayes. But once again, when they come to Cincinnati, whether it's the Skyline Chili, whether it's the Ohio River, whether it's Grater's ice cream, they cannot stay healthy. And I know Austin Hayes had a history of this back in San Francisco of his calf.
Baltimore. Yeah.
Or Baltimore. And
Mo Egger, I think it was, in Austin Hayes' professional career, so minor league and stuff too. He's had 20 IL stints. That's a lot.
When he plays,
he's pretty solid. Yeah.
He's pretty solid. I'm happy with the acquisition.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with the acquisition.
But if you're lucky to get 100 games out of him.
Right.
So that's.
I'm happy with the acquisition of Singer. I think that was a nice move. I think better than India.
India's not been good this year for KC. But.
Is he better than McLean right now?
But not Lux. His numbers aren't better than Lux, so that's the direct replacement, I guess you could say. But
Lux. But so what is this franchise? What do we need to do to be? I want to be a contender every year, right? I want to be that Tampa Bay Rays that's always there.
Cleveland's always around. Milwaukee's always around.
St. Louis,
St. Louis is
they're going down, but they're in second place right now.
Yeah, no, I guess you're right.
And they were supposed to be rebuilding this year, right? That team reminds me a little bit of the 2023 team, the Reds. 2 years ago.
Yeah.
A lot of young guys. This is when Ellie came up, Matt Clint, they just started winning and believing in themselves. And the Reds didn't do enough. They didn't go out and get anybody at the trade deadline because we got enough. We got people coming back.
Well, no, they got Sam Moll.
That was the only person, right? Right. I said enough, not enough.
No, you're right.
So what do we need to do? Because those are small market teams I named. I mean, for crying out loud, Tampa Bay, I mean, they don't have anybody coming to their games. I mean, they're not even playing in their stadium because of the roof damage. So what do we have to do as far as, and I don't blame Nick Kroll, for a lot of it. There are some things that I'm like, okay, this, and this, but, a lot of people just want to, our former co-host wants to just throw blame on Kroll all the time. Well, Kroll. Well, I thought he has done a very good job of getting some talent and making some trades that set the direction of this team. Once again, these players aren't performing. So is it Kroll's fault? Is it our schematics fault? Is it our philosophies? Because I mean, for crying out loud, last year we were saying DJ had to go because our pitching was horrible. And now our pitching is great. Is it? I think it's maturation on that part. Hunter Green got another year older. Lodolo is healthy. Abbott is healthier now. The acquisition of Singer, Nick Martinez, but our pitching depth is gone. I mean, with the injuries, because Chase Petty is not happening.
Well, and that's the thing. A lot of our prospects just they just haven't been turning into stars, right? I mean, they just haven't. So when you're a small market team and you're trying to build a team organically, those guys some of them have to turn into stars. They just have to. Otherwise, you're not going to be successful. I mean, they don't have to be superstars, but they need to be borderline all-star guys that, are productive winning players. And I mean, outside of Ellie, and Ellie's too inconsistent to really call a star, but outside of him, I mean, who would you be like, yeah, let's sign this guy to an extension right now?
Hunter Green, I think. I
mean, well, they signed him to an extension.
They signed him to an extension, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that's one, but I mean, nobody's signing McLean to an extension right now.
Not right now.
Nobody's signing Steer to an extension right now. CE, I don't even know where that dude's at. Is he? I mean, he's on the IL.
He's in Arizona right now, taking some baseball activities.
He's not going to be around in the organization much longer. So I mean, I don't think he.
They like him. They like him. I don't know if Frank. I mean, they like the power, right? They want that big bopper. Because they're like, well, hey, if he could stay healthy, he could be the big bopper.
Yeah, he could be, but
he's got to stay healthy.
He's got to stay healthy. And even when he was healthy, I mean, he ran into one every now and then, but I don't know. I mean, it's funny you say that. And then Reese Hines was in AAA while we had Blake Dunn and Hurtubise battling for the 5th outfield spot. It's like, well, you want a big bopper. Wow. I mean, they're starting to play Hines now, but bat him 9th. He's going to hit 2 homers a week. He's going to play decent defense for you in the outfield. Yep. That's better than whatever Hurtubise and Dunn and Fairchild and whoever else you want to throw out there we're going to do.
Well,
but you decided, no, we're going to do that. We're going to go that route instead of Reese Hines, who we saw when he gets hot, dude can hit 8 homers in a week.
Right.
Same with Will Benson.
Yeah.
And
Will Benson is doing that right now.
And he's doing it right now.
Right.
Now he's going to go 0 for 27 here next week, but
with 10 strikeouts, but yeah.
At least he had that peak. Hurtubise and Dunn,
they don't have
no
that
peak. There's just valleys
peak.
And a plateau.
Right.
So, I mean, I'd take the peaks and valleys rather than just the valleys.
And I think a lot of that was,
I guess, yeah, whose decision was that? Was that Francona's call or is that front office?
That's Meter and Kroll's call. I mean, they'll probably say, hey, we're, who do you, we're thinking we got to send somebody down. We got an injury. Who do you want? Do you want blah, 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 blah? And a lot of it was, well, when Fraley went down, Hurtubise came up, well, because we want that left-handed bat and blah, blah, well, Will Benson is sitting down there, right?
Right.
Well, Will Benson had his chance and he went 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. And so, no, he's not ready yet. Will Benson can catch lightning in a bottle. He did that in the 2023 season, just like Ellie and McLean and Spencer.
I mean, the whole team did that year.
The whole team did,
from
right?
what, late May to July?
Yeah.
Basically the All-Star break?
Yeah.
I mean, they were one of the better teams in baseball.
Yeah. And let me see this here. So this was a tweet by Bryce Spalding. So shout out to Bryce. I follow him on X. He's a Reds fan. This was on May the 10th. Okay. He goes, if you take out the 12-game winning streak for the Reds in 2023, they have a record of 166 and 186. They've gone 119 and 137 since the trade deadline in 2023. They were 10 games over 500 on July 1st. Only teams worse are the White Sox, Colorado, Angels, Miami, Oakland, Washington, Pittsburgh over that time frame. Think about that. I mean,
none of those teams were in first place at the beginning of this timeline.
Right.
Yeah.
The Reds were, and they sat on their hands. And to me, that's the big thing and this is where I think ownership takes the blame. I think Bob Castellini, Phil Castellini, they're whining and crying, saying, we want to spend money, but the ownership group doesn't want to spend money. The other 16 owners saying, no, we can't, we don't want to, no, we like this, whatever. And this is where, if you're Bob, you got to say, no, we're going all in. We're going all in. And then if, the Williamsons, because they're mad that, you brought in other people instead of, Dick Williams to be your president and baseball operator, they had that falling out. Then you go out and try to buy them out.
Exactly. Yeah. Spend the money that way.
Right. Buy them out so that way, Marge Schott did that. She bought out a lot of people. And she was the last one to produce a world championship for the Reds. She was all about the fans, and she was all about winning. And she went out, and now, granted, I mean, take her outside, her mouth and everything else.
We're
outside.
Talking baseball here. We're just talking
baseball. I mean, she went out and she brought Pete Rose back, right? She brought Dave Parker in. She brought then Lou Piniella in. She went out and they traded for Randy, the Nasty Boys. And, and that was, boom, lightning in the bottle. And then ever since that, it's just been, 95 was the next great opportunity and didn't win. And I think, we're starving for these teams to just, and that's why like Crawley gets so upset at people. He gets upset at me when I'm like, yeah, that 99 team was such a great team. He's like, no, it wasn't. They didn't even make the playoffs. I'm like, but nobody expected them to do that. Just like right now, we are not expecting the Reds to make the playoffs. But if they go on this run and they're one game short, we'd be like, dang, that was exciting. That was what we want. We want to be competitive.
We want to be competitive in August.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
We want to. But I was expecting the Reds to make the playoffs this year. So if they don't, even if it's only by one game, I will be disappointed. That's me personally. I don't know about the rest of the fan base.
I said that they would. Terry Francona would.
I said they win the division and win 90 games. So
yeah, did.
I'm. That's not looking pretty for me, but
they better get on a hot streak here.
Yeah, they got to get on one here. But yeah, I mean, it'd be a disappointment if they don't. Because also, we've been talking about now, that was the whole, we didn't go in 2023 because of 2025. We're in 2025.
Right.
And you're telling me now we're worse off than we were in 2023 when we didn't go all in because we're waiting on 2025? That pisses me off. That's what angers me. And if the rest of the fan base doesn't see that, then maybe we're not as smart of a baseball town as we like to think. If the fan base can't see that, maybe Cincinnati's not the baseball town anymore. Because there's cities out there that when Nick Krall's head would be on a stake. Okay, and Philly, get out of here.
Well, the
You know?
Cassellinis would not own Philly either.
Well, right.
You know,
That's a different,
ooh,
yeah. That's true. I mean, we Cincinnati fans pride themselves on not being the irrational fan bases of
Right.
Philadelphia's and New York's. We're smart fan base. You can't be a smart fan base if you're not upset with the Reds this year. You just can't. Because this was the year why we didn't go after it in 2023. Why we didn't go after it last year was because of this year. And this is the product that's out there, a 500 ball club. Like that's pathetic.
Decisions, right? The Candelario, you heard it here first. I did not like that decision back when I'm like, why are we paying this guy $45 million? Oh, the reason we're paying him $45 million is because he went off on us in the games against Chicago. We couldn't get the guy out. So, let's bring him here. No. Keep him on the IL, that phantom hamstring, whatever it is.
No, he should not swing the bat again for the Reds. Just IL, and then worry about it next year. But this year, he should not.
Move into the 60-day and forget about it. And then Marte needs to get healthy. All right. So moving forward, we posed this question, are we the worst city for pro sports? And we both said no. What do you think is the worst city?
I mean, if you're talking overall, Minneapolis gives us run for the money, right? Just no championships whatsoever. Then, the Twins for them in 91? Was it in the 80s? No, 91 was the Braves.
91. 92?
Maybe 92. But, the Vikings haven't won anything. Twins haven't won anything. Timberwolves haven't won anything. I saw a stat today, or not today, but the Minnesota Wild are the only professional sports franchise to have a 10-year stretch where they made the playoffs 8 or more times and not advance. And I was like, oh, that's just brutal. That's just brutal. Now all those teams that I mentioned from Minneapolis get to the playoffs. Right. So it's a little bit different. It's not front office incompetence. So I don't know front office like who. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know because you can look at cities that have multiple sports teams.
Yeah. Miami's up there, but you look at the Heat. That's one of the best run organizations in sports. Right, exactly. So I think they're disqualified. But if they just had Marlins and Dolphins, then they'd be up there with us.
Yeah. At one time, the Dolphins were.
Right. But at one time, the Reds were.
And the Bengals were.
Yeah.
Right? Paul Brown.
When they first started, they haven't been that way in a long time. But.
No, they haven't been. You're right. Pittsburgh, you look at the Pirates, right?
They got the Steelers, though.
That's what I'm saying. They got the Steelers and the Penguins, right?
Yeah.
Philly, you're talking about Philly. Well, no. Even though the Flyers, or not the Flyers, but the 76ers, they're trust the process.
Right, but Eagles just won a Super Bowl. Phillies were in the World Series a couple years.
They go out and get the players.
Right, exactly.
Because they want to win, right? And that's the fan base demands that.
Right.
That's our problem. We don't demand that.
No, we don't. We trust. We're too trusting of our.
Right, and we're like, and Phil. Even though we think Phil Castellini should stay in the basement, what he said, it's like, where are you going to go? That is so accurate.
It is.
That is.
There's a reason he said it. There's a reason he said it.
Right. You said that in Philadelphia. Where were you going to go? Well, you know what? This is where they're going to go. They're going to go march to your house.
Oh, he'd be at the bottom of the Delaware River.
Yeah, they're going to be burning stuff and things until you get out. Or, they will be. Yeah, to me, the one franchise, one city that might be worse might be Detroit.
Yeah, that's what
the Tigers are starting to. The Tigers.
In the mid-2000s, they had a run there.
Yeah.
With Verlander, Scherzer,
the Pistons are on the. They were good. Now they're down.
They made the playoffs.
The Red Wings, same thing. Red Wings were good. Now they're down. The Lions were down. Now they're starting to come up.
Yeah. I think Detroit would be in the conversation. We're in the conversation.
Chicago. Recently.
Yeah, Chicago might be.
The Bulls haven't been. The Bears. White Sox. The Cubs are. They want.
They're a big market team that operates like a small. You could probably throw Chicago in there. The Blackhawks have had a lot of success in the early 20s. but
Yeah.
I think they have too many sports teams to be included in this. I'm looking more cities with 2 or 3,
Yeah.
because when you have all 5 and when you have multiple in one,
Yeah.
it's a little different. Like LA, New York, you can throw them out the window.
You could say Kansas City with the Royals, but I think they're ran pretty good.
Yeah.
I do. I think
they purposely go in cycles, right? They had their 3-year cycle in 2013, 14, and 15 where they won a World Series. They rebuilt, and now they were supposed to be good.
They signed their young
Yeah, they
guys
do.
2 extensions early. Bobby Witt Jr. They dished out money for him, right?
Yep. And he's on a bargain deal.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to say for someone who's getting he got $300 million.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a bargain.
And that's where Reds need to say, Ellie, let's do that deal.
Here you go, right now. Yeah.
But Boris, nope.
Well, Witt's a Boris guy, which is why it was so surprising because Boris guys go to free agency. Witt signed. So I mean, it's possible.
I think Witt said, "I want to sign."
Well,
and that's maybe part of it too, right?
Yeah.
All right. So the last thing on this, I know we've gone long-winded here, but I thought I think it's a pretty good conversation, and you guys can always chime in. Send us a direct message on Instagram or at YouTube at Cincy Sports Scene and give us your take on the state of Cincinnati sports. But the last thing is, can Cincinnati support another franchise? And by that, I mean, an NBA team, an NHL team, or a NWSL team. I mean, if we're going to do the NBA, NHL, we've got to get that arena.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
that would have to come with an arena. Yeah.
And even if we can't host, I think an arena would be beneficial to the city just because of March Madness, concerts and other things that we could host in there. It would not go empty.
Right? Yeah, that's true.
So, but
I think NBA would be that's out of the question. The NBA has no interest in coming to Cincinnati. They've got other markets, Seattle, Vegas in particular. So Cincinnati's out of the question there. You'd be looking at NHL in terms of men's, but I think NWSL is where the next team's going to come from. I know they just announced Denver, I think, got one, and there was one other city that got one since he didn't. But I would not be surprised if the next round of expansion that they do, if Cincinnati's.
That's where I'm leaning at. And I didn't even put in the WNBA.
I don't think that they would. Indianapolis is too close, and I think that's part of the reason why NBA wouldn't happen.
Right.
Because Indianapolis is too close.
Yeah.
Especially NBA, you've got Cleveland already in the Ohio market. But WNBA, I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know if it's sustainable, like the growth. I mean,
I think it is. I think women's sports are finally getting a little bit more respect.
They are, but
they're gonna go to bigger markets first.
Yes, they are.
They're not.
And I agree.
They're not going to Cincy. I mean, they're.
But, when their whole operating budget is basically a write-off,
that's going
NBA
change because they get they're negotiating a new TV deal. I think after next year they can. There's going to be some money poured into that league. I'd be willing to bet on that. It's just because of Caitlin Clark.
Well, yes,
solely because of her. But
solely because of her.
There's going to be money poured into that league. I would not be surprised by that at all.
All right, so we're both in agreement that Cincinnati could support a women's soccer league. I mean, I'm talking fan support.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when the women's national team came here, I mean, Nippert was sold out. I mean, sold out every single time. I mean, It was annoying to me because I was a UC student at the time. We couldn't even go to the rec because, I mean, they had to shut it off because there was just too many people in the area, But we could definitely. I don't think that I don't think they play at TQL. I don't know where they would play. Might be another Nippert situation, and then they build a stadium. The NWSL teams don't typically share MLS counterpart stadiums. They usually a lot of them have their own. So I don't know if that would be a prerequisite for them to have one. And then I guess maybe that would be the hang up from Cincinnati is, do we really want to build another stadium? So
yeah. And would it be downtown or would it be in northern Kentucky or would it be in
where it would be? It would be
suburbs.
In the downtown area. It wouldn't be in the suburbs, I don't think. I think it would be maybe in northern Kentucky, but still walkable from the downtown area.
Mm.
I don't think we're a big suburb stadium city. I don't see that ever really
I don't.
happening for us.
Yeah, I don't
In
know.
part because imagine because our city doesn't have a true south side because it goes into Kentucky.
Right.
So I mean, you don't want Cincinnati traffic. I mean, you don't want a stadium in Mason. It doesn't make. I mean, you're cutting off everybody in Kentucky, pretty much everybody from Indiana from going to a game.
Well, that's true. That is true. All right. Well, that about wraps it up here for us. And we just want to thank you for hanging with us as we broke down the state of Cincinnati sports. Whether you're frustrated like us, hopeful like us, or somewhere in between, we know one thing: being a fan of this city is never boring. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on YouTube or your favorite podcasting platforms so you never miss an episode. If you like what you heard, hit that like button for us, leave a comment, or drop us a review. It really helps us grow, and we want you to be a part of this show. So if you think you got the right answer to this week's trivia question, be the first to email us at CincySports or CSSPodcast@gmail.com, or DM us on Instagram or Twitter at CincySportsScene, and you may receive something special. Next week, we are ranking the best events in Cincinnati from opening day to Oktoberfest. You won't want to miss it. Find out where your favorite event ranks from us. Until next week, for Sam, I'm Dave. Everybody take care.
That's it.